So you decided to start kettlebell training, and initially you were having a blast. It was a fun new training implement. You learned a few basic exercises like the goblet squat, the overhead press, and the kettlebell swing, but suddenly you realized repeating the same handful of exercises over and over again is kind of boring. Which is why today I'm going to show you an extremely powerful method for leveling up from beginner kettlebell techniques to intermediate and advanced techniques like this. That way you can expand your kettlebell arsenal, take your functional strength gains to new heights, and never experience burnout from boredom again. So stick around to the end of this video, and I'll show you exactly how to implement this learning method from start to finish. But before we get started, it's important that you understand how this method works. The name of this method is chunking, and just like the name hints with this method, we take a complex exercise and break it up into chunks, meaning we learn pieces of the movement at a time and put them together to form the new, more advanced technique we are attempting to learn. Which sounds simple enough, but it begs the question, what exactly are you looking for when breaking up an exercise into smaller, trainable components? And this, my friend, is why learning basic exercises first is so important. Because when you're learning a complex exercise, you are simply trying to identify what combination of basic exercises makes up the full movement. And a really simple example of this is something like a single arm thruster. You can probably spot two exercises right away that you could mash together to make this exercise: a single arm front squat and a single arm overhead press. And if you already have those two exercises in your arsenal, simply training them in combination will make for this single arm thruster variation. But what about something more complex, like a kettlebell clean, for instance? Well, we'd break it down just like we did with the single arm thruster. If you look at a clean, there is a swing, a single arm row, and the front rack position, which can be trained in front rack carries and overhead pressing variations. Now, remember how we combined the single arm front squat and the single arm overhead press to make a single arm thruster? With the clean, we've identified at least 3 components. And in this case, if we tried to train all 3 components together, we would do what most people do when trying to learn the kettlebell clean, which is try the whole movement at once and beat the piss out of our forearms. But we are trying to be more calculated than that. So what if we just combined 2 of those components, the swing and the single arm row, for example? What's cool about this is by combining a swing with the single arm row in one smooth motion, we've actually learned a new kettlebell exercise. This is called a gunslinger. And as you can see, it looks a lot like the first part of a kettlebell clean, which is what we are after. But now comes the tricky part. How do we train something like a single arm row to a front rack position without just doing the full movement? This is what's cool about chunking. We get an opportunity to exercise some creativity and think about how to close those gaps. And one way that we could start putting this movement together is by using our opposite hand to assist the kettlebell in the front rack position after we perform our gunslinger. The reason this works? Well, by simply catching the body of the kettlebell with the opposite hand, you can slow down the transition between the single arm row and the front rack. And once you feel comfortable there, you can perform the full kettlebell clean and it will go much more smoothly, all because of chunking. And learning something like the single arm kettlebell clean then opens the door to a double kettlebell clean and a whole new world of kettlebell exercises you can add to your arsenal. So if you remember these 3 steps, identify the basic exercises within the complex you're trying to learn, perform combinations of the basic exercises, and fill the gaps. To put it all together, once you feel confident executing the progressions, you will have a foolproof method for expanding beyond basic kettlebell exercises and implementing new, fun techniques into your training routine. But even with this new chunking method under your belt, unfortunately, there are still some exercises out there that are tough to break down without years of kettlebell training experience, including one of the most sought-after kettlebell techniques, the Turkish get-up. So if you want to add this beast of an exercise to your training arsenal and avoid the most common mistakes that hold people back when learning it, check out this video here, and I'll see you on the next one.